Hi, it's Kylie Koo. Welcome to my studio and welcome to part 3 of my latest eco journal, aka Trashy Junk Journal. And can I start by saying thank you very much to all of you who have watched part 1 and have left, lovely comments. That's very encouraging and very supportive, so thanks very much for that. And even if you haven't left a comment, if you gave it a like, or even if you just watched it, then thanks so much for that. Very much appreciated. So whilst I was uploading part 1, I got on and did part 2. That was yesterday, and I've kept it fairly simple in terms of making tags and tabs and that sort of thing. But I hope you also enjoyed that. You can certainly let me know. So this part 3, is now about starting to put some kind of colour onto some of the pages, some embellishments. This could be just used just as is, but I often find that even if I just start a few pages just with a bit of colour here or there, or a bit of embellishment here or there, sometimes when I'm thinking, what will I do then, if I just see something, it just maybe gives me a little bit of inspiration to maybe continue with a page. And also, when I used to travel a lot with work, and if I was staying away from home, which was fairly frequent, I like to take a journal with me. But of course you can't take always a big huge pack of supplies, so I'd have a few with me. So it always helped me that if I had some background done beforehand. So I'm not going to get through the full journal, but I thought what I would do is I'd take just a few pages out and just show you the way that I sometimes do that kind of initial layer of decoration. One of the other things I want to do is, I have been thinking about, am I going to put a closure on this, or will I just tie something round? And then Lottie, who watched part 1, came up with a great idea, and that was to take this box, I think this is the one she was referring to, and actually move it, and I think she said to the outside, and use that to make a closure. And I thought, what a great idea. So I'm going to take that out and do that. Whether or not I'll get that all done again in this video, I don't know. We'll just see how time goes. But I'm going to take it apart anyway, because I just want to pull out a few different pages just to show you how I work on them. Now what I've also done is I've gone to my, I was going to say scrap box, but I've got so many scrap boxes. I've just pulled out bits and pieces of junk from different places that I can use as part of the background. So, little remnants of things, little scraps of paper, all things where I've been working on things before, and these are kind of left over. Bits of Happy Mail, again, some of which I've used before, and other bits are left over. Bits of jelly print, raffle tickets. I always think numbers look good on pages. Bits of kind of wool, fibres, whatever. Baby wipes. And some things for stamping. Just my recycled items. Obviously, if you have stamps, then use stamps. I'm just trying to keep it that I'm keeping up with that kind of recycling thing, bits and pieces, even old receipts. Now, the other thing I did have a think about this morning, as I woke, as you do, I hadn't used this empty Christmas card box, and I got an idea for this. However, when I went back out to get this, I found something else, which is this. I think this is a piece of packaging that was obviously wrapped around a box, and I've kept it. And I thought, well, rather than cutting this one, I'll cut this. So I'll do that, and I'll show you at the end what I think that would be useful for. The other thing that I came across, I've been doing a bit of decluttering more generally, and I came across this old tag thing, that had a kind of ID pass in it, and I thought that would be great to put either on the front of a journal with the journal name. It could come off of here and just be glued down like that, or it could go in a page inside. So if you wanted, say, an important reminder about something, you could just slot it in there on a piece of card. Something could change out, or just clip it on. Yeah. So, liked the idea of using that. So I'm going to clear some of this away and pull out a few pages. I'm going to show you how I put paint on them, how I put papers on them, and maybe even a little bit of jelly printing as well. So let's get started. One other thing I want to say before I get started, and I've said this in other videos, where you're using boxes such as these, it can be quite difficult to get things to kind of stick to these. So you either need to put a coat of something like a gesso, a clear gesso, but even then sometimes it can start to lift a bit. The best thing is to give it a bit of a sandpaper and then just kind of use a wet wipe or a wet cloth, a bit of wet tissue, whatever, just to lift it off and let it dry. Some of these types of junk mail are also quite shiny, so it would never do any harm just to give that a bit of a rub too. Sometimes this sort of thing, the likes of watercolours, wouldn't sit well on it unless you do kind of prep it in some way. So for the most part, I would use acrylics. The likes of these envelopes, watercolours should be fine on that. But as I say, some of the things that have got a bit of a shiny coating wouldn't do quite so well with watercolour. But with all of these things, it's just a case of trial and error. Right, I'm going to get started. quick note, I got a bit too close and for a bit too long with my heat gun on this window envelope, so it has in fact melted. And I don't think I can pull it apart, so this will now just become collage for something else. It happens. I was kind of watching something else at the time, got distracted and just didn't think, but hey ho, that's the way it goes. So you can see how these are shaping up. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to keep working on these few pieces, because obviously it is quite a lengthy process, but I'll keep working on this, maybe just adding some more little bits and pieces, and we'll see where I can get them to. So I'm not trying to create complete pages here. All I'm trying to do is to get some things of interest down that when I come to this page in my journal, then, you know, it maybe just gives me a kick start on something. So these are going to take a few minutes to dry. But while they are, I'll look at doing some other things in the journal. You know, and I've added some bits of texture and other colours. Obviously, when it comes to doing a page, this could end up being completely covered, and that's quite fine. I liked how this little slither of paper that I had left over fitted quite nicely onto the flap there, and it makes it look as if there's a rough edge to it, which is quite good. And, you know, just kind of rolled over that on the jelly print, or just with a roller, I can't remember what. And you know, already here I've got a tag starting to take shape, so that's something that would be quite nice, you know, just of an evening or just a little bit of time, or you know, if I had this away somewhere, I could just take this out and start to work on it with a few bits and pieces. You know, it's there as a starting point, and here's another little journal that's here as a starting point. I don't mind some of the writing, the images still showing through. As I build up, some of that will disappear, some of it may be left there. I don't mind. I think the fact that this is junk, it's quite nice to remember that, you know, we're using junk here. So yeah, so I'll let these dry, move them off to the side, and I'll maybe just start doing some other bits and pieces. So I feel like I've barely got started on this, but I've been at it for a little while, so I think already it's going to be quite a long video. So I thought what I'd do is just stop and let you see where it's got to, and what I'll probably do is a part 4 where I show you it kind of completed. You know, it'll take me a little while to do covers and that type of thing, but just to show you where I've got to. So what I included, I'll just open this up for a bit of working space. I used that piece of plastic, you know, again another piece of junk that would have gone in the trash and probably is not recyclable, but I've used that almost as you would get at the front of some planners, you know, where people have a little dashboard, so you could have flags or sticky notes or whatever, so that if you wanted to quickly, you know, if you're using this in as say a planner, you could just take something off there and mark it wherever you wanted. So I've got that. I've then used my little piece of cardboard almost as a kind of bulletin board. This is maybe just a little bit big, but you know, it's something you could write out. I just happen to have that, so I thought, right, and I'll just put it on with a safety pin, and then that could be changed out daily if it was a kind of to-do list. Alternatively, you know, you could just clip it on with one of the little mini pegs. And of course I've still got this to add in somewhere. Then just to show you how I started to, oops, off it goes, to decorate the pages. So here I have the start of this mini journal. Now I may or may not do the inside, but it just gives a starter for, you know, working on. Again, that would be a nice little project of itself one evening, just to sit and decorate the cover. And you know, likewise here, this could almost be left as is, or more work could go into it. You know, there's almost spaces for journaling. You could take a black pen and journal down here if that's what you wanted, or a drawing, you know, more paint, whatever. Likewise here, you know, I've almost, well, other than spraying the dots on, I almost started to disguise the fact that that was an envelope there. Not done the inside yet, but I had to wait until this was dry. And, you know, it could do with another coat of paint, or, as I say, I mean, this one's got actually quite nice lines on it. I quite like it, the way that it's looking, so that's something I might leave. This little card, this is making, to me, is calling for, you know, almost a little mixed media piece. That looks like a mountain and clouds to me, but whether it will turn out as that, who knows. Another piece, and again, this page could almost be left as is. Could journal on it, do some written journaling, could draw on it, I could see a face going on here, whatever. That's what I was trying to say at the start. Oh, I don't know how I'm going to get that out. You know, if I was sitting and I opened this journal and saw that page, it might just inspire me, you know, it might spark my imagination to do something. Obviously, the backs aren't done yet because I didn't have enough time to dry both. This envelope survived. I didn't put the heat gun on that one too long. Then some tags, and again, this is just all using bits and pieces left over from other projects. So a piece of raffia, that piece of wool, put it through there just now. The tag can get decorated at some point. I do like the way that this is shaping up. It's going to make a nice tag, and again, just a piece of that wool through it, a little peg on there, special attention on that bit, you know, you could have whatever. And then I took another page, and again, it was just to show an example of ways to decorate things. All I've done is to thread, you know, punch some holes and thread that piece of wool through there. And I'll probably put a better fixing on it. I've just done that to make sure it doesn't unravel. Now the other thing, of course, I need to do is to take Lottie's idea and make this into a closure, and I think that will work really well. Tie this up. And I think it's going to need a closure because already, you know, and that's me just started working on it, it's starting to get thicker and thicker. So I could imagine maybe attaching this in here and then bringing this round. And that would actually give a bit of space to work in. Could even bring it out a bit from there. Yeah, so I'll will work that out. But I think that's a great suggestion, so thanks for that, Lottie. So I think that's it for this video. As I say, I think it's going to run pretty long, so I think part 4 will be a flip through of the final thing, though this will take me a little while just to do those kind of background pages on it. Then maybe after that, if you're interested, then perhaps I could show you me actually working on a couple of pages, if that's something that would interest you. So hope you've enjoyed the 3 parts so far, and I hope that you'll join me for part 4. So thanks very much for watching. Bye for now.